tonight we have with us Konstantinos Roditis. He is an amazing man. I've met him all through my campaign for U.S. Senate. I've seen him speak. I've seen him work with the people, talk to the potential constituents. He's running for controller, California controller, and this is a statewide race. He's a very busy man. He's looking to reach the people, and he's going to speak with you today. I'm going to want him to share a little bit about what a controller does. I don't even think that everybody really even knows what the California controller does. And quite frankly, I've heard him talk, and I still don't understand the major intricacies. But he can, I believe, shed a bit of light into this, and also let us know, what the current controller is doing really great, and what needs to really happen there, and how he can help us find strong solutions for California. We need those strong conversations and strong solutions. So thank you so much for joining here on the Erin Cruz Show. Konstantinos, we just really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me, Erin. And to basically get to the point of what a controller does. Well, it's really simple. The best ways to kind of think about it is the treasurer is kind of control of when the money comes in.
Right.
And the controller is when money comes out. So anything that comes out of basically the state's treasury goes through the controller's office, signs the checks. That's the main job of the controller, plus has independent audit authority. So, for instance, when you want to take a look at the high-speed rail, right?
Everybody wants to take a look at the high-speed rail.
Yeah, the supposed high-speed rail, which isn't very high speed. Now the controller has independent audit authority, but more importantly, what the controller has is the ability to hold all payments that don't comply with state law. So if you remember, the authorizing agent was Prop 1A, that authorized the bond for the high-speed rail, and it mandated that 1/3 of funding come from the state, 1/3 from the federal government, and 1/3 from private sector. Well, the federal government has stopped funding it, and the federal and we've not seen one penny from the private sector. So, for instance, the controller would have unilateral authority to hold all payments on the high-speed rail, basically killing it until it complies with Prop 1A. So that's why it's important for us to have a controller
that does their job.
I'm sorry, can you say that last part?
It's important for us to have a controller that does their job and does it well. What I've heard is that our current controller isn't serving the people of California, and certainly the job can be done in a more appropriate manner, and that from what I've heard from you, you're the man to do that job. So now, what is, in your position as you've been campaigning, what is, some of the biggest heat that you're getting about your campaign in terms of what people want done from you? I mean, is it looking at some of those tough issues like the high-speed rail? I mean, what are the constituents talking to you about?
Well, they are really concerned, obviously, about the high-speed rail. Obviously, yes, on Prop 6 for repealing the gas tax. So besides the ability to audit and be the chief financial officer of the state, the controller has the power of the bully pulpit, just like the president does with Congress. Really has the power of the bully pulpit to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible, and that's what's missing from controller's office. So one of the things that I tell people is the current controller is actually pushing a service and labor tax. So, for instance, if you think healthcare got expensive under Obamacare, it's going to get a heck of a lot worse because Democrats in the legislature and the current controller is pushing basically at least $120 billion a year tax increase. Healthcare going to tax that. They're going to tax childcare. Yeah, basically name it. Any service that isn't taxed right now, they want to come after it.
And the current controller is in support of this.
Yeah, it's her plan. She's the one who authored a comprehensive tax reform, a contextual framework that was called. Really, all it was how can we tax you more instead of looking.
How can we take more of your money? How can we steal? How can we make it easier to steal taxpayer money in a lawful manner? So where do you stand on taxation then? I mean, it sounds to me like you're pro you know, less tax, if you will. You're for easing the tax burden on Californians, unlike her.
Yeah, and we have to actually cut taxes and regulations, primarily regulations, right? Because regulations is actually a tax. It works like a tax, but it's a tax at the beginning before you even build a product or you sell a service. So if it's too expensive for you to open up a business, there's nothing for you to sell. They'd be taxed on the back end. So number one thing is regulatory reform. That's the biggest engine to the economy that will spur by making more business friendly, and also the top marginal tax rates, especially now with the Trump tax plan of only $10,000 of tax deduction onto your federal taxes. We need to really adjust the way we do business in California, because before billionaires and millionaires were kind of insulated by California's bad policies. Well, they're starting to leave the state now.
Right.
We're seeing reports of that, and the biggest problem is 70,000 people make 48% of the general fund to California.
Right.
15,000 make 25% of it. So we're the state of have and have-nots. That's why we have such big difference between the rich and the poor in the state.
Right.
Of income equality. It's because we've become that kind of state.
So now, as it relates to some of these checks that are being written, as a constituent, as a mom, as a citizen in the United States who wants to see America first, Californians first, California and U.S. citizens first, some of the checks that are being written out of California, I mean, are just insane. And who they're being written for. I mean, where do you stand in terms of fiscal responsibility and ensuring that we're doing the right thing and we're making the right choices, and that you're doing your job and you're being that nice, loud voice and bully pulpit that you need to be? I mean,
yeah, on those situations, for instance, like obviously I'm for taxpayer dollars being used on legal residents of California, obviously. But the thing is, as long as it complies with state law, as you know, the law basically is written that we're not, we don't have parameters on who can and who can't, depending on legal status, for instance. That's still compliant with state law.
right.
Now, in those ones, I still have to cut checks.
Right.
I can't unfund programs because I personally don't like it. I believe in the rule of law.
Right.
So within those ones, now I can obviously put pressure on the bully pulpit, and it's important to get good legislators on the state Senate and the Assembly
right.
districts that are, going to hold their feet to the fire and say, we're about helping people, but we can't be the welfare state of the world and attract people here by our generosity.
Right, right. So now, and the reason why I bring that up is because many people would say, well, then why are we cutting checks for, well, look, your job is to follow the law. Whatever state law is written, that's your job. So now, I'm just going to take that back, because one of the components and one of the reasons why I'm having you on the Erin Cruz show is just like to get out the word, to help people understand the function of government. We need to get those good legislature, members of the legislature that you're talking about in there, so that way you don't have those checks that you need to cut that maybe are adhering to California state law but may not be adhering to federal law, and perhaps, I'm not sure how the monies and the finite points are, but the citizens have a clear mark of what's going to be getting done. So we need to get those elected officials in place. That's for the California State Assembly and for the California State Senate.
Yes.
And clean up that mess. Now, I think that, after talking to you on the campaign trail, after hearing what you've had to say in your talks, and people can go, by the way, to your website, and you're going to give that to them here in a little bit, and learn more about you, learn more about your background. I think it's important for people to get educated on who's running and who's already in there, by the way. She is just a piece of work. I say that loosely. People need to get educated and make that right choice for who they're going to vote for, because you know what? You're a good man, and you'll do the good work of California and serve the people. Because one thing that I saw on the campaign trail as you were going around, as I'd see you in different rooms and in different talks, you would listen. You're a good listener, and that's far and few between, especially with politicians, by the way. So.
Well, that's why I've been a successful businessman my entire life, basically, being in the business world.
Right. Tell us about that. Let's go on a tangent.
Yeah. Well, when I was doing a recent endorsement interview, and they said, well, kind of about your background, I'm like, well, as a CEO and a chief financial officer, the number one thing that I need to know about myself is what I don't know, right? What I'm stupid at, into the sense, right?
Right.
It's because then I have to hire the right people to go ahead and fill in those gaps, or people with the knowledge to inform me so I can make the right decisions. Right. So that's why it's important about, I don't know everything, but it's for me to surround myself. I have a good worldview, a good foundation, and the information as it come in from an audit or a report, I can absorb that in and make the right decision. So that's why it's important to always listen, because sometimes you don't have the right answer. And if your goal is to, just to win an argument, then that's fine. I'm looking to, win the argument into the sense of I was right and this is what's best for California. And that's what's more important than my ego.
Right. And I love what you say right there, because campaigning and watching everyone, what I saw were a bunch of egos. And one of the biggest problems we have in government right now are egos. We have to put people first. And that's what I saw time after time after time again when I saw you in rooms. You're putting the person right in front of you that you were talking to first. They were important to you. Their thoughts were important to you. What was going on in their life was important to you. And that's commendable. And I'm so glad that you bring up ego. Egos need to move out of the way. We need to have the information, be able to get the good work done, and be able to serve Californians. So, could I have you repeat your name, your race, and then also, a little bit about yourself, and then give people information on where they can find you on social media or even your website, and learn more about your campaign.
Oh, perfect. Well, my name is Konstantinos Roditis. I'm running for California State Controller. The best way to find me is at my website at cacontroller.com. I am a businessman, a chief executive officer, and chief financial officer, and I'll take my knowledge and experience as a successful businessman in the private sector to Sacramento and replace a lifelong bureaucrat.
Yes, we need you. We need you, Konstantinos. I'm telling you, we do. We need you in the California legislature. High time to have a good, solid businessman in there and putting people first, Americans first, Californian, United States citizens first, and get this state back on track. And, common sense. Common sense is what we need. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the Erin Cruz Show. We are going to have you back. It's a long run till November. Next time we have you on, we'll let you talk a little bit more about specifics, get into some of the policies and the legislation, and talk about the fine points, because I think Californians need to hear it to be able to make that hard choice when they go check that mark in November. I think it's November 6th, right, is the vote?
Yes.
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 Yes. Konstantinos Roditis for California Controller. Doesn't that sound great? Thank you so much for being on the Erin Cruz Show.
Thanks for having me, Erin. I appreciate it.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about the Erin Cruz Show, visit us online at erincruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ